Welcome back to Yoshi Entertainment, everybody. Well. Look at what we have here. So after almost a year, because if I'm not mistaken, it was last June when this came out about the former pastor Robert Morris, how he was accused of mishandling a child at the age of 12 for about 5 years, up until she was almost 17, back in the 80s, in the Dallas, Texas area. Remember when I made this video? If you've been watching my videos, if you've been following my channel since that time, I said that I didn't believe he was as sorry as he claimed to be. Allegedly, apparently, there were people around him who knew what he did, and they swept it under the rug. They tried to use all kind of jargon, saying that the lady was a young lady. Remember, they used that phrase when she was blatantly a child when he allegedly did what he did. He never faced consequences. He should have turned himself in. Now, they claim, like I said back during that time, that he apologized to the family and then he set himself down for a 2-year restoration period, whatever they tried to label it as. But he should have turned himself in and served jail time, actual accountability, because that's not something you just sit down from. He mishandled, horribly abused a child, like I said, allegedly for 5 years. You don't just gloss over something like that. And the fact that he had a church community, not a secular community, but a church community who aided and abetted him getting away with what he got away with, disgusts me. He should have took accountability all that time ago. He didn't. Those people helped him get out of it. Over a year ago, or almost a year ago rather, when that woman filed that lawsuit, all she said she wanted was the money to replace all the money she had to pay for therapy for what he did to her allegedly. They didn't want to do that. They denied her. She could have asked for millions of dollars. She could have sued the church for covering up a crime. She could have did all of that, but all she wanted was the money back from what she had to spend on therapy. Y'all know I have to say allegedly, due to what he allegedly did to her. They refused to do that. So now we're here. So allegedly, and I quote, Morris faces 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child, the Oklahoma Attorney General Office said in a Wednesday evening press release. End quote. Now, I went through the details, how she explained how he manipulated her, what he did to her, how he took advantage of her. Like I said, the verbiage, if you will, that was used. It was all very messed up. And this was 43 years ago. 4 decades ago, this woman had to wait for justice for something that was done to her as a 12-year-old going into her latter teenage years. This guy was 20 years old when he did this to this 12-year-old. When this woman was 12 years old, he was an adult, legally, technically. He should have been charged as an adult for mishandling. Y'all know I have to say R-rated because of YouTube. R-rated abuse that he put her through when she was a child, like I said, allegedly. Now, she stated with the news outlet, so to speak, with the news network, and I quote, after almost 43 years, the law has finally caught up with Robert Morris for this horrific crimes he has committed against me as a child. She said, now it is time for the legal system to hold him accountable. My family and I are deeply grateful to the authorities who have worked tirelessly to make this day possible and remain hopeful that justice will ultimately prevail, end quote. Her name was Cindy Clemenshire, and I'm glad that her family is there with her every step of the way. It's hard for a family to fight for justice for something that has happened to their child when an entire community, when an entire culture, so to speak, is protecting the abuser. I don't think people understand how deep some of these church organizations go when it comes to trying to protect their pastor, who they refuse to believe has done anything wrong, or they have replaced God in their lives with their pastors. This pastoral worship, if you will, is no different than the worship, the pedestal that a lot of people put celebrities on, the celebrity worship. And then you have to think about with these church communities, these big mega churches, they have a lot of legalities, a lot of legal loopholes, all this stuff that they've done. All of these things legally, politically sometimes, they've gotten themselves involved in to the point where they care more about keeping the image of their pastor who they worship squeaky clean instead of holding him accountable and let the truth be known, justice be had. Once again, this is showing us that we really need to have a conversation about this church culture of covering stuff up in the church. Putting pastors who are still human on this pedestal of they can do no wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't any good pastors out there in the world. There are plenty of them. There are plenty of good pastors who are saved for real, Holy Ghost filled, and they're doing the right thing. They're not mishandling people's children. They're out there. They just don't get the publicity that the bad ones do. That's something we also have to admit and talk about for a short moment. The bad ones are the ones usually getting all the publicity. They're usually the ones because they've done underhanded things to get where they are, to get the fame that they have. A lot of these pastors, these megachurch pastors, their fame did not come from God. Those are the ones that's constantly being shoved in our faces in the media, always going viral for the things that they do. Unfortunately, we don't always get coverage, so to speak, on the good pastors of different communities out there in the world. Different pastors in different cities and states who are making a difference in their local areas. Although a conversation, like I said, still needs to be had about these church organizations, especially when they become more of like a business, a corporate sector, if you will, than an actual church community covering for horrendous things being committed, horrendous crimes being committed by the leaders of said churches. If somebody mishandles a child like that, you don't sit him down for a 2-year period and then let him go run back to the pulpit to do the same thing over again. No, you, first of all, call the police. And then while the police are on their way, y'all all turn your backs and allow the father, the mother, and whoever else exact a little family justice physically, if you know what I mean, up until the police get there. This is not something you just gloss over. You don't say, oh, we're going to cover the pastor. This is the pastor. We can't turn him in because this is the pastor. Oh, God's will for his life. Blah, blah, blah. This. He threw that in the trash when he committed heinous crimes. Now, I could see if he had did something like he was unfaithful to his wife. While that's morbidly disrespectful and disgusting for you to do, especially as a pastor, especially of a megachurch, a lot of people whom are watching you as an example of a decent man, although infidelity is not against the law. It's a disgusting sin that God will hold you accountable for, although it's not illegal. And it's not a heinous crime against a child. The church has gotten all the way confused about that, about how to handle people who do stuff like this. Now, a lot of people have been talking about lately his influence, how he gained a lot of support, how a lot of people looked up to him because they thought he was a godly example, that he talked about dealing with lust and issues with him stepping outside of his marriage. A lot of people thought that, oh, he's being upfront about his issues. He's not hiding it. Little did they know all this time he's been hiding stuff that he was never completely honest about, that he was very delusional about. That's how far and deep in his sin he was already. I'm almost convinced these people really deluded themselves into believing that he didn't do anything wrong, that, oh, she just seduced him, which, again, that's just wild for anybody to even think, disgusting and disturbing because, again, she was a child. I mean, those people were really trying to spin this story on his behalf to make it look like some adult woman had seduced this grown man into sleeping with her despite him being married and having children. Because if I'm not mistaken, he had kids. He was very young. He was 20. But again, he was still an adult. He was married and he had kids. Which makes it even worse because did he ever wonder while he was doing what he was doing to her, breaking the law, doing a heinous crime, if he ever wondered what if somebody had did that to his wife or to one of his children? But anyways, a lot of people are now confused because they're saying we were listening to this man's sermons, we resonated with what he was saying, but now what are we supposed to do? Of course, they pointed out multiple times, that was like in the headline of them explaining what happened with this situation, that he was one of Trump's, I think, evangelical advisors, or he was on the evangelical advisory board, so to speak, for Trump. They were throwing that out there. So they're like, how are you out here, a whole megachurch pastor? You're on the advisory board where the evangelicals are concerned, the Republicans, the right wing. You know, they like to make it sound like because it's right that everybody's right. in that party, the conservative party. This goes to show you, as I've been saying before, a lot of people like to be partial when it concerns these political parties, or they blatantly want to paint this agenda that, oh, one is bad, one is good, when both of them are doing stuff they have no business doing, when both of them have people in said parties that are not doing anything good. Basically, people were saying that it was a bad reflection back on the church, back on the Republican Party, back on Trump, because again, he picked this person to be a part of his evangelical advisory board. Know them who labor among you, but I guess they don't want to do that. I guess that's too much like right. Like I said before, a lot of people were questioning everything. They were saying, oh, well, we thought he was doing the right thing. He did this particular thing. He represented this particular thing we agreed with, but now we're questioning everything because all of this is coming out now. He could have admitted to this years ago and could have handled it, taken accountability the proper way, but he waited until it blew up in everybody's faces, including his, with the help of his congregation, with the help of people around him who did not care about Cindy's innocence, well-being, mentally or emotionally, nor her health at all, didn't care about that at all enough to protect her and do what was right. Now, some of these people who were following his ministry are confused and they don't know what to do. They're like, well, what do we do now? We really thought that this guy was doing the right thing. He had us deceived. It's 100% understandable that people would feel that way. That's quite the natural reaction due to the circumstances. Although what people are going to have to understand is they're going to have to be very vigilant. They're going to have to be very mature. They're going to have to use wisdom in these kind of situations. It is very messed up and sad what happened to that woman all those years ago. I certainly hope they finally hold the guy accountable. I really do. Although no one should take away from this situation the idea that all pastors, like I said before, are like this, because that is by far not the truth. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. We need to learn from it. We need to learn what to do. Churches need to learn how to have a policy put in place so that if something, God forbid, like this happens in their own churches, they won't be acting like how these people acted. They won't mishandle the victims, further traumatize the victims. And we must hold on to the fact that even though there are people out here doing stuff like this, many of who have still not been discovered and held accountable yet, because just like he got discovered, I believe at some point in time, all the rest of them who are doing this, they're going to get got too. Although that's not the case for every church. Not every church is operating like this, like I said before. Not every pastor is like this. And that those people like Robert Morris, they are not a reflection of who God is. God didn't do this to these people. God didn't hurt people. God didn't mishandle people. And he didn't tell people like Robert Morris and that church to hurt people and cover it up. That is not who God is. That's not what his character is. That's not what he's about. Those heinous actions are what people do because they chose to give over to their lust and to not do the right thing that they claim that they were doing. The facade that they had been putting up and showing people all these years. Now the Attorney General made a statement that I'd like to read for you all, because I want to double down on the mistake that was made when they were handling the crime against a child that was committed by an adult. And I quote, "There can be no tolerance for those who are rated, so to speak, prey on children," said Attorney General Ginter Drummond. This case is all the more despicable because the alleged perpetrator was a pastor who exploited his position. The victim in this case has waited far too many years for justice to be done, end quote. Now, if I remember correctly, the news did release a statement saying that one thing that kept the statute of limitations from throwing a wrench in this justice is that he was not actually from Oklahoma. He's never lived in Oklahoma. He was only visiting the state during that time whenever he did what he did to that woman whenever she was a child. Y'all know I have to say allegedly. Once again, I don't play when it comes to these children. I know that she's an adult now, but the fact that once again this happened all these years ago and it took all of this for her to finally get justice is really sad. I've said that the justice system is whacked. It's ridiculous. And even how some people keep other people from having justice with their power, influence, and money. Any other time when we need to come together as a community to get something done, people don't want to do it. But oh my goodness, they'll cover up a crime. That is ridiculous and it's disgusting. There were also some people who felt like all of the individuals in that church community who helped him cover it up, who tried to make it seem like it blatantly wasn't what it blatantly was, they also need to be held to some kind of legal consequences. And I completely agree with that. It is to my knowledge that in certain states, they have different laws concerning that. Where minors are concerned, like it's a different ball game, like I said before, when there's a child involved. I certainly do think they need to be held accountable because, again, they help to cover up a crime, a heinous crime against a child. And also, they really thought in their goofy behind minds that they were doing the right thing, that they were covering for their pastor, probably thought that they were doing God's work. The audacity, I said before, God was nowhere in that because God, if they were actually listening to God, first of all, he never would have been at them people's house doing what he did to that woman when she was a child to begin with. If he really was walking with God and being led by the Spirit, and if they were being led by the Spirit, they would have never covered it up. Allegedly, there were some people, even other pastors, who were made aware of this and told him he needed to do what was right, but he chose not to listen. All these people who aided and abetted him, who covered up what he did, thinking that they were doing the right thing, thinking they were doing God's work, they really did more damage to both him and to the body of Christ in that community than they could have ever did to help. Because like I mentioned before, now there are many people who are left in confusion, who are left disturbed, who are left conflicted. They don't know what to do now because after following his ministry, thinking he was doing the right thing all these years, they have come to find out that all of it was built on a lie and falsehoods. Sorry if I came across as redundant in certain parts of the video. I really like to drive certain issues, certain points home because there are just certain things we need to constantly be in conversation about because we're constantly seemingly dealing with them quite often. But anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this down in the comments below respectfully. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Y'all all have a very blessed, beautiful, and safe day.